When people talk about extreme winters in American history, they often mention the legendary blizzards of the 19th century or the famous cold wave of 1899. But few truly understand the brutality, the desperation, and the sheer survival instinct tested during what many historians describe as one of the coldest and most devastating winters ever recorded in the United States. The winter of 1933. This wasn't just about snow and ice. This was about a nation already on its knees during the Great Depression being pushed even further into hardship. It was a season where nature showed no mercy, where thermometers shattered records, where rivers froze solid, where livestock perished in fields, and where ordinary Americans had to choose between hunger and heat. The winter of 1933 struck at the heart of a struggling country, amplifying fear, poverty, and uncertainty. Yet it also revealed resilience, unity, and an unbreakable will to survive. To understand how devastating that winter truly was, you have to imagine the setting. The United States was deep in the Great Depression. Factories were silent, banks had collapsed, millions were unemployed, families were already struggling to afford bread. Coal and firewood were luxuries for many. When the Arctic air began sweeping down from Canada in late 1932 and intensified into early 1933, it didn't just bring cold weather. It brought crisis. Temperatures across the Midwest and Great Plains plummeted to unimaginable lows. In states like North Dakota, Minnesota, and South Dakota, thermometers dropped to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit and below. Even areas further south, not accustomed to such brutality, were frozen solid. Chicago experienced relentless sub-zero stretches. New York Harbor saw ice forming in places rarely frozen. The Mississippi River carried thick sheets of ice like a slow-moving glacier. Entire communities felt as if the country had been placed inside a freezer. The cold wasn't just about numbers on a thermometer. It changed the rhythm of life. Coal trains struggled to move because tracks cracked in the extreme temperatures. Locomotives froze. Oil thickened like syrup. Farmers woke to find livestock frozen where they stood. Water pumps stopped functioning. Wells iced over. Pipes burst in homes that barely had plumbing to begin with. For families living in rural cabins, warmth depended on wood stoves, but wood supplies ran low quickly. Many were forced to burn furniture, fences, even sections of their own homes to stay alive. Schools closed for weeks because children couldn't safely travel through snowdrifts that towered higher than rooftops. In some regions, snow combined with fierce winds created blizzard conditions so intense that visibility dropped to zero. People who stepped outside without protection risked frostbite within minutes. In cities, the story was just as grim. Urban unemployment meant thousands were living in shantytowns, often called Hoovervilles, makeshift communities built from scrap materials. These shelters offered almost no insulation. The winter wind cut through cardboard and thin boards like knives. Soup kitchens were overwhelmed, and now they had to serve not only the hungry, but also those seeking warmth. Charities struggled to distribute blankets and coal. Municipal governments, already broke, faced impossible decisions about resource allocation. Electricity demand surged, but infrastructure faltered under the strain. In some places, power outages left neighborhoods completely in darkness during freezing nights. Hospitals reported rising cases of frostbite and hypothermia. Elderly citizens and young children were particularly vulnerable. Transportation nearly collapsed. Roads disappeared under layers of ice and snow. Rural areas were isolated for days or even weeks. Mail delivery halted in some counties. Farmers couldn't bring goods to market. City supply chains faltered, causing price spikes for essentials like bread and milk. Ice flows on rivers disrupted shipping. Along the Great Lakes, thick ice trapped vessels and halted maritime commerce. It was as if the entire country had slowed to a frozen standstill. Even the railroads, the lifelines of American commerce, suffered breakdowns as steel became brittle and machinery failed. Agriculture, already damaged by drought conditions that would soon escalate into the Dust Bowl, faced additional suffering. Livestock deaths were catastrophic in some regions. Cattle and sheep, unable to find grass beneath deep snow, starved or froze. Farmers lost entire herds in a single storm. The economic damage compounded the depression. Grain supplies froze in storage bins. Farmers who survived the winter financially scarred entered spring already in debt, with fewer resources to plant new crops. The psychological toll was immense. Imagine watching animals you raised from birth collapse in the cold, knowing you could do nothing. The winter also exposed stark inequalities. Wealthier families could afford coal deliveries and insulated homes. Poor families huddled together in single rooms, wearing layers of patched clothing, sharing body heat under thin blankets. In some communities, neighbors formed informal coal-sharing groups, rationing supplies so that no household would freeze completely. Churches opened doors as warming centers. Acts of generosity, though small, meant survival. Stories emerged of strangers rescuing stranded travelers, of farmers braving blizzards to deliver food to isolated neighbors, of city residents organizing clothing drives. In times of extreme hardship, humanity often reveals its strongest qualities. Meteorologically, the winter was driven by powerful Arctic high-pressure systems that repeatedly pushed frigid air masses deep into the United States. These cold waves weren't brief. They lingered. The jet stream dipped far south, allowing polar air to dominate for weeks at a time. When storms collided with this frozen air, snowfall intensified. Ice storms coated trees and power lines, snapping branches and plunging communities into darkness. Some areas recorded some of their coldest temperatures in recorded history. The persistence of the cold made it particularly destructive. A single cold day can be endured. Weeks of relentless freezing weather wear down even the strongest spirit. Children growing up during that winter carried memories for life. They remembered the sound of wind howling through cracks in walls. They remembered the sting of icy air on their cheeks as they walked to fetch water. They remembered nights when frost formed inside bedroom walls. For many, winter meant survival tasks rather than play. Boys chopped wood. Girls helped mend clothing. Entire families worked together to conserve heat. The concept of comfort disappeared. Survival became the only priority. Industries adapted in desperate ways. Some factories shut down entirely because machinery couldn't function in sub-zero temperatures. Others ran limited hours. The economic ripple effect extended nationwide. Unemployment rose further in certain regions as businesses temporarily closed. Yet some sectors, like coal mining, experienced increased demand, though transportation bottlenecks limited distribution. Ironically, even with demand high, getting fuel to those who needed it most proved challenging. Wildlife suffered as well. Birds froze mid-flight during sudden cold snaps. Fish died in frozen lakes where oxygen levels dropped. Forest animals struggled to find food beneath thick snow cover. Nature itself seemed locked in a battle for survival. The frozen landscape stretched for miles, a white silence broken only by wind. Farmers reported eerie stillness after storms. No animal sounds, no movement, just the creaking of ice and distant gusts. Looking back, the winter of 1933 stands as a testament to endurance. It revealed how vulnerable infrastructure was, how dependent people were on fuel and supply chains, and how quickly nature can overpower human systems. But it also highlighted solidarity. In times of freezing darkness, people shared warmth. In times of hunger, they shared bread. In times of fear, they shared hope. History often remembers wars and political movements, but natural disasters shape societies just as profoundly. The cold of 1933 carved memories into a generation already defined by economic despair. It strengthened arguments for stronger social safety nets and emergency preparedness. It reminded Americans that resilience is not built in comfort but forged in adversity. Today, with advanced meteorology, insulated homes, central heating, and rapid emergency response systems, it is easy to underestimate what people endured back then. But imagine living without reliable electricity, without guaranteed income, without modern insulation, facing weeks of sub-zero temperatures. Imagine watching the world outside turn white and silent while uncertainty fills your home. That was reality for millions during America's coldest winter era in 1933. The lesson from that winter is not merely about cold weather records. It is about human strength. It is about communities that refuse to surrender. It is about the determination to survive even when conditions seemed impossible. Nature tested America, and though the scars were deep, the nation endured. That endurance would soon be tested again by drought, dust storms, and global war, but the spirit forged in those freezing months contributed to the resilience that carried the country forward. The winter of 1933 remains a powerful reminder. Hardship can freeze the body, but it does not have to freeze the will. Survival is often a collective effort. When systems fail, people step up. When temperatures drop, unity rises. And when spring finally breaks through, it feels earned. If you found this deep dive into history powerful and valuable, make sure to like this video, comment your thoughts about what surprised you most, share it with others who love historical stories,